Welcome to Ground Floor Government. I am your
Woohoo!
producer, Joseph Lewin, and I'm joined by who will be your regular host, David Plappert. And we're going to be talking about local government and the importance of transparency and accountability and really being able to get um, everybody access. Because there's a lot of people, believe it or not, who have a hard time accessing important meetings in the city that they need to be involved in, whether that would be city council meetings or it could be, board meetings, could be, meetings related around schools where there's a lot of communities who aren't able to get proper access. And so we're going to be diving in and talking about that. And this is the first episode of a new show where we're going to be talking about local government and how to make it work better for everybody, and bringing accessibility and transparency to everyone. So, David, super excited to chat with you today.
Joseph, I am so excited. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here. And I think we're going to have an amazing show today. Look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so I want to kick off just with a pretty simple uh, ground floor question, if you will, and that's just kind of laying the foundation for why is it important for everybody to have access to city meetings.
Yeah, this is an awesome question and very much a foundational question. Um, I believe that communities are made to serve their entire population. I don't think there should be an overlooked segment or demographic of a community that isn't at least represented in local government. And it's really easy to do so, especially with resource constraints, time constraints, and whatnot. So um, I believe it's huge to have transparency, accountability, but I also understand the resource, time, people, money restraints, and making that happen. So this is a huge deal for me, trying to help bridge the gap, if you will, to making sure that all these communities are connected to.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not unreasonable that this happens overall. I think as a community member, you go, well, of course we should have access, but also, you've got city managers, city clerks, people who are in charge of communication who have limited budgets. They've got a lot of things to cover, and so sometimes from their perspective, it's like, hey, we're doing the best we can with what we've got, and we're trying to get
Yeah,
access to everybody, but they have limited resources, including limited time, and so that's part of why we want to talk about this and bring awareness so that the people whose job it is to get people access are equipped with what they need, and getting that access. So, with that, I'd love to dig in a little bit more to a lot of the common groups. Because for me, I work remote from home and I'm on video calls all day. So if I want to jump on a city meeting and it's available through Zoom or whatever, which there's a good portion of them that are, I might not really realize how many people can't get access. So who are a lot of the groups that are commonly overlooked?
yeah, this is an awesome question. So the short answer is there's roughly 20% of Americans who cannot access live video content. So that's one in every five. And I think the reason they're overlooked is because it's not so much one or two groups, kind of as you alluded to. There's a whole segment here of the population that struggles to access online content. Those include people who don't have broadband access. So, according to the U.S. Census, over 10% of the U.S. population doesn't have broadband at home. That includes cellular, satellite, or anything like that. So that's one in every 10 right there. So you can publish as much as you want online in an attempt to be transparent, which is an awesome first step. But right out of the gate, you're missing one out of every 10. And then you add to that, you add those who are disabled, blind. You add to those who are elderly, people who generally are living below the poverty line, people who are deaf, people who don't work with a computer. Right? If you're a manual laborer, you're in retail, you're in construction. and you're working in the middle of this, you're not working in an office setting, right? It's, if content becomes online,
Yep.
it's very difficult to interact with that. And even people who travel, right? I mean, how many times have we tried to you know watch something on our phone while we're on the freeway, and it'll work for 5 minutes and then drop out and
Yep.
whatnot. So you add all these groups together, and you easily get a minimum of 20% in the average community here in the United States that is going to struggle to connect with content that's placed online. So yeah, this is really kind of the foundation for this conversation, for this podcast, bringing awareness to this and seeing what we can do to help.
Yeah, and it's a little bit hard to believe, honestly, that 10% of people don't have access to broadband. Because if for those of us who work online primarily, it's like I can't even imagine going for like 24 hours without having access. But there are huge portions of the population, 10%, who don't have access, and that could be people living in the rural communities around the city who still need access and they still need resources. And then I also worked for over 10 years in um, blue collar work where I was out working every day, and usually out in the sun, climbing on roofs, doing all kinds of stuff like that. And so, yeah, during that time, there's absolutely no way I would have been able to jump on a Zoom call to listen in
Right.
on something, and it could be something that's super impactful, right? Maybe there's a resource in the city that I need for my kids, or school board meeting, or something is affecting my local area with funding for police or whatever, and it might be something I'm really passionate about, but no way that I could get access when I was working those kinds of jobs. So uh, it is easy to see when you include all those different people how 20% of people couldn't access it even if they wanted, and that's a huge portion of the population, right?
One in every five. I mean, just start counting down your road. One of every five houses. It's going to be an issue. And just to kind of draw a little bit clearer of a picture here. So the broadband gap generally is sold as a rural issue. Generally sold, out in farm country, out in Timbuktu, out in the boonies. But based on the U.S. Census data that they've published, it seems to be a lot more so a poverty issue
Mhm.
than it is a rural issue. So um, a lot of inner city. So you look at like Chicago suburbs, you'll see where the wealthy communities are, you'll see 5-8%. There's still a good chunk there, but then you'll go to like Chicago and you'll see 15-20% just of
Wow.
people, of households that don't have it. So this isn't a rural issue. This isn't a metropolitan issue. This is really an American issue, and for different reasons, but the connectivity's there. And then there's reports who've been published that between 5 and 8% of the population, you could run fiber to their house. You could give them a $5,000 budget for the latest TVs, iPads, latest computer systems, MacBooks, and whatever their iPhones they're most comfortable with. But the fact is that they would not be comfortable accessing content online. Sometimes these are elderly. Sometimes these are security conscious people. Sometimes these are blue collar people who are just scared. But roughly 5 to 8%, depending which report you look at, of the U.S. population, you couldn't pay them to get online. They're not going to get online. And so, yeah, there's so many of these, and these aren't huge. The biggest demographic probably that 10%. But a lot of these demographics are 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. So, how do you reach these people, and how do you have the resources to reach these people,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm still waiting for the day where we can come up with 25 hours in a day. So
Right.
I'm not trying to blame anybody, not trying to put blame on anybody, but really trying to see what kind of tools and resources we can have to reach these marginalized groups.
Yeah, and then to build on what you're saying there, just because I this is the whole foundation of what we're talking about. So I do want to spend a little bit of time digging into why it's important for these communities to have access. So for one, I totally agree with you on it not just being a rural issue. Obviously that's hard because it's hard to run fiber and to those houses it's super expensive because they're so spread out. But I live in Cincinnati, and a friend of mine is a CEO of a local IT company, and he's really taken this issue seriously, and he's worked with our local internet provider and local business owners, who basically the business owners agree to buying from this service provider, and then the service provider agrees that they're going to provide access to a certain number of houses within a zip code that wouldn't normally get access. And he was sharing some really similar stuff with me, that there's these kids in high school who are in homes with no access to broadband in our community, right? And they can't afford to do it, and even if they could afford it, it's going to be super low speed, so they're not going to be able to stream Zoom classes or whatever. So there's a lot of students that are falling behind in these inner city communities, especially during COVID, and that whole season where they had to be at home is even worse, right? But it is a huge issue, and if you don't have a private citizen that's taking that seriously, like he is, a lot of times there's just not enough resources to get access for those folks. And then the interesting thing is, in these lower income communities where they're going to have the higher prevalence. So like, yeah, across the board it's 10%, but like you're saying, it could be 15, 20 in some of these low income neighborhoods. They often are more dependent on city resources, whether that's the bus line to get back and forth to work, or, their kids are more often going to be going to public school and not going to a private school. So they need to understand what's going on. Um, Even more, at an even higher percentage than some of these other wealthier neighborhoods. So you have this issue where a huge portion of those people can't get access, but then they're the ones who actually probably need to get access more than your average person would anyway, because of the services that they are getting from the local government.
Yeah. So just to sidetrack for just a second, I did a study, if you will, a couple years ago on what it actually takes to watch a live stream. What actually has to happen. So you have to have funding for a broadband company to run fiber or broadband to your area. You have to have so you have to have enough neighbors to make it economical. You have to have the money to sign up for a plan. Then you have to have your ISP has to be working. There's some areas where you have like a Wi-Fi connection or a cellular connection, satellite connection, where the dropouts are intermittent. Then once you get inside the house, then you have to have a working network, right? So most ISPs provide you with a simple kind of device. Sometimes those don't have Wi-Fi coverage to all the rooms. Sometimes they're outdated. Sometimes you have to have your own device to even have a network, and the expense for that. Then you have to have a device that's able to connect to your network, and you have to have it has to be modern enough to be able to handle your live stream. So you're looking at something from the last probably 3 to 5 years to be able to handle that. And then you have to have the time to do that. And so, you're meeting 7 o'clock at night or 9 a.m. in the morning, right? And so, whatever that time frame is, that person has to have the time. Then beyond that, that person has to know about your meeting in order to make
Yep.
the time to attend. And so you have, once you actually draw it out, there's like 20 or 30 requirements, steps in order for a person to partake in your community live stream. And just so many barriers, if you will. And for me and you who work online all day, right? Like we're used to just going to the coffee shop, popping our laptop open,
Yep.
or jumping in the home office. But for a lot of these segmented groups, you get so many of these barriers put in, and they start tripping up, and you start losing participation. And sometimes I think we take for granted being online, right? We're just
Yeah.
it's an expectation, just like just like electricity. We expect to go someplace and plug in. But how if you look at the stats until the last 10, 20 years, electricity wasn't even an ubiquitous thing out in a lot of these rural places. Still have outages and whatnot. So yeah, just an interesting thought process of what it actually takes for a person to watch your live stream.
Yeah, and then we'll so we're gonna dive into a couple things in this episode, and then we're gonna tease out some things we'll cover in future episodes. So we will get in a little bit into some ways to solve this, some ways that it's currently people are currently solving it, and then what's what's coming down the pike. But also, I'd love to just kind of set the stage for what happens when somebody does get access. So you've worked for a while with accessibility, and you're working with cities, which is kind of the focus of in local government, which is the focus of this podcast. But you've also worked with some other groups to get access. So um, what have you seen? Can you tell me about a story of somebody who wasn't able to get access to an important meeting to them that then they were, and what happened?
Excuse me. Yeah, this really is why we do what we do. Um, is we get these stories, we get them often. Of I'm thinking of one in particular of an elderly person who hand wrote a letter to us, figured out who the provider was, and mailed it into us, and a page long, just poured out her heart really, and just said thank you. Like I get sidelined so easily so often, and I'm able to actually partake in a community that means something to me.
Hmm.
And man, it just we've got it framed up in our office, and it's why we do what we do. We've had people call us and be like, "Man, I just got off the phone with one of our members, and um, they really just opened our eyes to why we do what we do, and the change in attitude, the change in accessibility. Like we can actually um, easily interact with a lot of these marginalized groups, and how exciting that is. So we get stories all the time. We've been on the phone with people actually crying. They're so thankful that they're able to connect to the communities that they care about in a way that is actually meaningful to them. So it's very real. These people are very real. These stories are very real, and it's just awesome to be able to help and be a part of more stories.
Yeah, I mean, and most of us are paying taxes. Most of us are, and live. I mean, everybody lives in a local community, right? And who doesn't want their community to be better? And so, getting this access to people is an important way to just get people more involved in what makes their city go round. And um, so, yeah, I'd love to break down then. So there's the Zoom meeting aspect. So I'd love for you to break down, kind of what cities are typically doing right now from an access to meetings perspective, starting with how often are they actually having a live stream, and then getting into what tools are available to actually let people get access when they can't access through Zoom or a streaming software.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So we've seen a lot of communities start live streaming based on a recent Granicus report. It looks at right about three-fourths of local communities are live streaming now. So that normally involves like a YouTube, Facebook type channel. Normally involves some type of setup on site, some cameras, some audio equipment. Sometimes it's as simple as a Zoom setup, where participants can join that way. Um, and looking at it from an accessibility standpoint, that's an amazing first step. Getting content outside of our form walls. Then beyond that, to try and reach some of these marginalized groups, we've seen some telephone conference bridges. We've seen some Zoom call-in phone numbers. We've seen some free conference call type solutions, and just regular conference type lines, which I think is an awesome awesome attempt to try and reach these groups. Did I lose you?
Sorry, that was my bad. There's some background noise going on, and I muted myself for a second. Um, I would, yeah, I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper into each of those because I mean, um, we're going to be diving a little bit more into Phone Live in our next conversation, which is a way to get people access easier. But there's already a bunch of things that exist, like you just mentioned. You know, Zoom call-in features and free conference calls and the phone bridges and everything like that. And so I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about the pros and cons of each one, because to your point, like there are things that people have been doing in an attempt to bring access already. And so those are a great start, but love for you to dig into each one of those a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. So let's start with Zoom. This seems to be a fairly popular one where they provide a phone number for people to call into, which is awesome. So you don't have to have internet access. You can call in to this phone number. You do have PIN and prompts to kind of go through. So you need to know the right PIN and you need to know what time the meeting starts at to get in. And then you also have to have somebody on site let people into the meeting, and then mute, unmute, that kind of game, if you will. But it does allow people to call in if they know when the meeting is and can handle that flow. Then there's free conference call. We've seen this a little bit. It is free for the city, for the organization. It does require manual setup and interaction for every meeting. So you've got a person sitting there kind of running the free conference call line, if you will, making sure people know what the meeting pin is. And again, you have to know, whatever that pin is, and you have to call in at the right time. The huge downside to like a free conference call over a Zoom is the way free conference call makes money is they route calls through carriers with higher rates. And so for the people who the phone is supposed to be trying to help, normally they don't have the unlimited, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile type plans. And so we've seen over and over again, I can probably tell you 100 stories at least of, elderly, these marginalized groups who have tried to participate in free conference call or similar solutions, where they end up with a phone bill at the end of the month for 100, 200. We had one that was like $550,
Whoa.
just because they wanted to participate in their community. So once we kind of pull the mask off a free conference call, that's how they make money, right? Is they route these calls through high rate carriers, and because obviously the person doing the broadcasting isn't paying, and that's kind of why it's a
If it's free, you're the product, right? Usually.
yeah, exactly. So that's free conference call. And then you've got your third I'll hit on, and last I'll hit on, your conference lines. So you've got, a traditional, ISP that's run a conference line for you. People can dial into it. They have to know what the phone number is. They have to know when to call in. They have to know what the PIN number is. And you normally have to have a person kind of sitting on site to let people in and manage the phone setup there still. And again, depending on your setup, sometimes some of that cost is passed on to the person calling in. Sometimes it's all housed in site, if you got a toll-free number or whatnot. But there's a lot of manual for all three of these. There's a lot of manual, every meeting, on-site interaction that needs to take place for outside people to be able to interact. And so not only is it difficult for the outside people to interact via phone, it's also resource intensive inside because you have an FTE, that's either semi or all the way paying attention to your phone type solution. So
Yeah. So with then you guys have been focusing on a solution that's different than those. So maybe you could just give, like I said, tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but on our next episode later this week, we're going to dive deeper into PhoneLive and what you guys do. But there's other providers that have some similarities. So what is the advantage of using something like PhoneLive, a software solution like PhoneLive?
Yeah, so there's really three big benefits to PhoneLive. The first one is we connect directly with your live stream. And so what that means for you is there is no management from meeting to meeting. You start your live stream like you normally handle your live stream. There's no extra hardware, no extra apps or phone lines, no extra starting, stopping management, any of that in your meetings to use a service like PhoneLive, to use PhoneLive. Secondly, and this is kind of our magic sauce, if you will, is we maintain a subscriber list for you. And so whenever your meetings go live, we call out to those subscribers. And so they don't have to call in, they don't have to remember what time the meeting is.
Mm,
They just get the phone call. And that's kind of our magic
that's
sauce.
huge.
So we provide every city, every organization with their own toll-free number, and so there's never any pins, there's never any codes or anything like that. It's a fully branded 24/7 phone system for you for your meetings, and because it's 24/7, we also for our third point, we also automatically archive. So you go back to that blue collar person working weird hours, that school student who has school in the evening, 7 o'clock or 9 a.m. in the morning, 7 p.m. in the evening just isn't their time of day, and they struggle to access stuff online. Now with your 24/7 phone system, they can call in whatever time is convenient for them and listen to what was last live. And again, that's all
Mm.
completely automated. So your on-site maintenance, there, you don't have to have a person managing it. You don't have to monitor it. There's no dashboards to look at. There's nothing to start or stop. All tied into your live stream. So those are kind of the three big pillars of PhoneLive.
And then those lists are segmented by the interest of the person, correct? So you're able to call people only for the meetings that they've opted in to.
Exactly. So we actually provide a dedicated toll-free number per use case or per interest, right? So you got one for school board, one for police, one for your city council, whatnot. And so if somebody's interested in police, police meetings have their own toll-free phone number. They have their own list, their own stats, their own media, and yeah, yep, exactly.
And then, yeah, kind of the last thing I want to cover today is there is some regulation coming uh, next year, and over the coming years, and there's also a lot of local regulations. But that's another reason why beyond the core reason of, hey, we want our communities to have more access, we want to have transparency, we want to have accountability. Well, now there's also the compliance piece as well, right? That's coming. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about some of the regulations that are coming up over the next year or two, and what that means for cities or government agencies specifically.
Yeah. So ADA Title II was released in April. This mainly focuses around accessibility for government websites. That's 98% of the WACG rules that it endorses. But there's also a sliver of WACG that covers live stream accessibility. And it talks about specifically cities over 50,000 here by April 26, cities under 50,000, April of 27, having some type of accessibility solution tied on to their live stream. And
Mm.
so having PhoneLive fulfills those requirements and is completely automated on your side. So there's no other FTEs, no other management, that has to be done. Um, so yeah, we're excited that there's regulations coming down that actually match the segmented people that are out there, and there's kind of some noise around these people who have been missing out, and we're also excited to help anyone who's interested in addressing these very segmented groups.
Awesome. Yeah, well, David, thank you so much for sharing about the importance of access for these communities, and why there's such an issue with them getting access. And then, like I said earlier, we're going to be having another episode later this week that's going to address some of the unique perspective that you guys have on the market, and diving a little bit more into PhoneLive and the value that you're able to bring to cities. But with that, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you, Joseph. It's been an honor.